I'm Michael Orwig, and welcome to the Wizard's Chest. With me today is a longtime friend of mine, Aurora Juliana Ariel, PhD, healer, psychic, mystic, doctor, kahuna, singer, author. Did I get everything in there? We could be here a while talking about all the things that you've done for humanity, for the shifts in consciousness. You taught a mystery school for how many years?
Still going.
Okay, so it's been how many years? 10, 14 years now?
Since my 20s, I've been bringing out a lot of teachings and mystery school type knowledge, initiations, transformation, healing.
And because we talk about the new children and the shifts in consciousness, you're a mother. You have 4 children. And how many of them are grown and out of the house, shall we say?
All 4 now have spread their wings, are adults and thriving and amazing.
And we're going to talk about the awakening, and not only our awakening, the awakening going on planetary wide, but you have some nice stories to share as well around those. So, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. You've been a busy girl the last decade.
I've been
Over
counting
100
it up.
products?
I think it's
Books,
many years.
Books, CDs, music, and the different CDs and the products and the different coursework that you've done. You've done a lot there.
A lot of trainings.
Our main
Sacred
topic we
chores.
wanted to play with today is the global awakening. And one of the things you love to do is, as a mystic, you go in and have fun looking at the timeline. And all of us normally that came in as the first wave of way showers have played with the history to a certain extent, going back thousands of years, not just recent history or whatever. Certainly, the way I see it, the big push quickening happened after World War II. But we can go back to Lemuria, then Atlantean times, and then almost kind of a global reset. How do you see it with the way you look at it? Obviously, we can go back to earlier resets, but what of the history intrigues you the most of this long cycle that we've become much more awakened to? Because previously, everybody being asleep just did a standard mundane, lived for 40 years, 60 years, 70 years, whatever it was, and had a family, did their thing. Now, all bets are off. We're into a whole new deal.
There's been an arrival.
Play with it a little bit and go back as far as you want in some of the history as you see it and you know it, and we'll take it from there.
I've been able to trace a lot of interesting histories because my life's work's been in the psyche, all things having to do with the soul and soul matters. And the inner work that I developed, Sacred Alchemy and later the Quest, 7 Steps, has been an inner process that helps people unlock aspects of themselves that are latent, that are like coals in the psyche that under this transformation become diamonds, multifaceted diamonds of the person's true divine authenticity in a world where you come in and you go under amnesia and you forget and you're running the family patterns. Now we're seeing in this time that mystics, it's like a mystic culture arrived on earth, very different than the souls here for thousands of years, and who are all undergoing this awakening, who came under the same amnesia and the same patterns and programs as the rest of the humans, yet being particularly fiery souls and who I call violet souls, because of course we know violet is the highest vibratory, transmutative, transformational, energetic, and these souls are very violet. They're like spinning tops of transformation, actualizing greater and greater of their divinity, bringing out that God aspect of selves, that geometry of divinity within, and bringing their great offerings into the world. So not an easy task. Yet I don't know if the world's ever seen this before. We've seen Renaissance periods in small regions. This is a global Renaissance. This is a global awakening. This is a time when people are throwing off the old programs and patterns that no one ever thought to do for thousands and thousands of years. And now everyone, 400 million's been the count, that's the demographics so far in the last couple of years, people are doing it. And that's why there's every kind of healing modality and everything supportive for us all. Now, we're coming into an enlightenment that is going to change this whole world, that is changing the world. We have masses of people moving away from unconsciousness and all the behaviors that created havoc in this world, and these codes of suffering and need to suffer and pollute everything and wreck everything until the whole world goes under a cataclysm to cleanse it again. And we are the ones that came in to avert that, which was scheduled in, so we know this with the seers, with Casey and others. And we're moving humanity on ever new timelines through our awakening, through our quickening, through our stepping out as our divinity, as our divine selves, and bringing that equation into the world. But there was another time point where the world was operating in the Edenic consciousness. The Edenic consciousness we're all returning to, which is going to birth an Eden on earth. That was way back in Lemuria, a culture that began in the Pacific, and it was hundreds of thousands of years ago, and I've traced over and over thousands and thousands and thousands of sessions with people, all the histories of the planet. So I found a little bit different history than in the history books by uncovering...
A little bit?
Yeah, by uncovering the records within the psyche, within the soul that has access to their Akashic records, which you can activate and get into and read as you're working with someone, and they're opening to that part of themselves that's the all-knowing part. All those records are there. And what was so amazing is this culture expanded globally. So it set up colonial empires and colonies all over the world. So Atlantis was a colonial empire, and Egypt was a colony, and the Incan whole areas of South American, the whole southwest of the U.S. is a hotbed of ancient Lemurian records, and there's even a cave that was found in the early 1900s in the Grand Canyon with artifacts, Egyptian, I think Lemurian, and Asian type artifacts in a massive caves that are closed off, and no one will talk about that the Smithsonian discovered and all that. All these things were brought to light by Churchward, James Churchward, who in the late 1800s went to India. He was assigned to India during the war and as an outpost from England, and he met this rishi in a temple, and the rishi, he found out as he became good friends with him, was 500 years old, living in a very youthful body, and he spoke of the sacred inspired writings of Mu. And the sacred inspired writings of Mu were in tablet form with hieroglyphs, and Churchward wanted so bad to see them, but it took 6 months for the rishi to finally say, okay, like, we'll check them out and make sure they're not crumbling, but they haven't been touched for 3,000 years. Now this rishi, I wish he spoke more about him, he had the keys from Lemuria, that lineage of how to keep your body youthful, a self-regenerating body, and stay in your God-conscious state all the time, be in your true authentic self, like they were in Lemuria. And like we heard in Life and Teachings of the Far East, that whole trek with Ballard, Guy Ballard.
Spalding's books.
Oh, Spalding's book, all through that. And touched on by the Green Books, the I Am books by Guy Ballard, of races of people even still on the earth that are living like immortals. They are in youthful, ever youthful bodies. And we know from the ancient records, people live thousands of years in youthful bodies. There was a time with no disease. There was no infectation, and there was a lot of harmony. But then there was a time where then there was the descent, and now we've had a very long history with little spurts of spiritual elders coming forward and teachings, but in pretty much a world coded to suffering and a big mess. And now the violets have come to remedy that.
Now, part of my understanding, and toss in here with yours as well, our solar system moves through the cosmos, and we moved through a period of time where we were either further away from the great central sun, or the alignment was not the same, and the energies coming to our solar system were of a lower vibration. Consequently, we had the fall. Within the cycle, our entire solar system is moving much more into a higher vibratory space of the cosmos that's going to affect everybody. And I know a lot of people, in their thought pattern, they see what I hate to say mainstream media wants to show them, but the various hate and crime and war that's still ongoing. And they go, well, how on earth could we have this shift in consciousness going on when I see this still daily? Look at all these people. They don't ever look at themselves. It's always, look at all of these.
Yeah, it's all out there. Now it's in here. Yeah.
When Mother Earth moved into her higher density body, for me, as I saw that was around 2012, it triggered a time frame that everybody has to shift with Mother Earth. You cannot hold for a long period of time, a low vibrational energy when the host planet has moved into her own evolutionary higher vibration. And so both of these are triggering. Now we look at the structures around society, and part of it goes, well, the government's not changing. We want the government to change.
Yeah, look out.
But all of these structures that were born during fear, separation, competition, control, those vibrations which were much lower, yes, they started there. They're not going to shift and change, but they will fall away because they're not supported by not only where we're going as a solar system, but where Mother Earth has gone as well. Pick up that and run with some of your thoughts on what you've seen as far as how can we have this quick of a shift on the planet, and we all see it as both extraordinarily quick. What do you see?
Well, absolutely. The old structures must come down. The new world is being birthed, and those that are gracefully riding that wave will have an easier time. That means you have to get pretty masterful at doing inner work, because all the things, the constructs within that are being projected outwardly in this holographic field of Earth, it's a mirrored image. It's got to come down. We need to be phoenixes rising from the ashes of the human conditioning and rise back into our divine, authentic selves to birth the golden age, to be riding that wave. And so many of us are riding it, and more people are getting masterful in it. And I believe, from my visions, from my remembrance, and one in particular, when I was 19, I remembered right before this life, we're in a soul school, many of us, and we were seeing images of Earth, and it was bringing up heartfelt emotions, and we're starting to acclimate to Earth and what it was going to be like. But we knew, as much as we were excited, and there were so many of us that were going to come in as this first wave, we knew it was going to be huge. It was going to be daunting. It was not going to be easy. Now, we knew for a while we would feel all alone and isolated, and who are these people we were born into, and what is this society, and kind of out of sync, like almost like something was wrong with us. But finally we would start finding each other. And as we did that, that kind of went into what I heard in that remembrance, is that we would be undergoing an ascension process. And what that meant is this mass ascension would be occurring, not like many people think of it, like Jesus ascended and went back to the heavens. It's not like that, because we are heaven born. We don't need to really do much except for die here to be back. There's a lot of misconceptions about it. But the true ascension, as I've been witnessing it, and I've worked with souls all over the planet forever and ever here now, that it's an ascension out of the dark elements in the psyche, the belief systems and structures that kept people suffering and endless dramas and the travail, of life, into the gold of our true natures, because that part of us is like a magic genie, the spirit within, and that part of us is what's birthing the golden age. You can work, and I learned this the hard way, you can work night and day making wonderful things for people and the planet and systems, but if your consciousness is not resonant in that Edenic consciousness, it'll just crumble and personalities will get in there and wreck it. To have a true and lasting change, we need to be changed within. And so the really whole thing that's happening here, that it's really an inner shift that then transforms the outer world. And from within, we're changing everything, and everything will be changed. And because we're here, the Violets, we're here to have the transition be with the least amount of suffering and cataclysm as possible. Therefore, we've all been doing like quelling the storms and holding California in place, and our light bearers, in the world, standing in their places as vessels of letting the light come in, letting the darkness be transformed as fast as possible with the least amount of suffering and hardship. And I am an advocate of that, a voice of positive planetary change. I sometimes feel alone in that voice, because a lot of people want to predict California's going, and this is going to happen, we have to have a full breakdown to have a new world. No, we do not. We need to bring our light consciousness into the equation, shift ourselves, create heaven on earth in our own life experiences, and then bring that light into our businesses, our communities, and transform the world gracefully under this great divine plan.
So within this change, there's a number of different aspects that are, to me, very interesting. In the first case, back when our group of way showers came in, I was born in 54. Lynn my wife, was born in, 75, dear? Give or take? One way or another. We were born in the 50s. And
we don't know when I was born. We're not.
After World War II, there was such a dark cloud around this planet. The light councils made a choice, and with Mother Earth's concurrence, sent out a call through the cosmos basically saying, we need some help here. Mother Earth was ready to do her shift, but the consciousness on the planet with World War I, World War II was woefully behind where it needed to be. And consequently, the light councils did a game-changing plan. Avatars like a Jesus, Buddha, Mohammed could come in and have a degree of effect, but they still had to come in through a human experience as part of what they were doing. And within our importing of star cousins from around the cosmos to come in without karma from all of the wars and everything else going on, they were able to bring a level of light onto the planet within the human experience, coming in with full amnesia and volunteers from across the cosmos. And I had estimated as many as 1 billion different souls heard the call, volunteered. Now, all of them were not accepted, if you want to call it that, but millions of these high-frequency souls have come in as way showers. Dolores Cannon, in her work, wrote of 3 different waves of volunteers. In my work, Spirit basically described individual soul groups as coming in overlapping groups of 7 years. And within that, you'd even have just a way shower like a Martin Luther King was a way shower that came in the beginning part of his grouping, but he didn't reach his power until the main civil revolution going on in the 60s, in the middle, when more of his soul group had actually arrived and reached maturity and on down the line. And it's a very interesting scenario as we look at the way showers. Now, we talked off camera about some of our path and decades of inner work it took to awaken and move out of the old energies. I went through my awakening in the early 90s, but it didn't really quicken until my divorce in 98. And then I had a 3-year period where everything in my life changed. It happens like that. In other words, we have within us the coding for when that awakening is going to occur. A good friend of my wife's and mine, Loris, went through his awakening when he was in his 50s. So you might completely live what we would look at as a absolutely grounded or mundane life, however you'd like to explain it. The awakening will happen for you when it happens. But across the board, mass consciousness has gone through huge shifts. And we've seen it. It's just not broadcast on mainstream media. They're not going to tell you about it. But that's how I've seen it within my stuff, my work. What have you seen on your stuff? Anything along the same lines? Difference? What have you seen with your work?
Some very interesting pieces to the puzzle. For one, what you were talking about is this grand plan. Under this grand plan, I've really seen that we all are that we're the missing element. That without us coming here, the world would have gone to hell again, because these old archaic structures built out of unconsciousness were going down, and going down in a big bang like they've done before. And now we have records in the earth of other highly technological advanced societies that went down, and in all, fast. So we were scheduled in, and as we've come in on this wave, we were actually all prophesied before we came, the American Indian nations of the Rainbow Warriors, multicultural, who would come as wayshowers, teachers, and all that. We are a group of souls from the high realms of light, I found, tracing thousands of cases, and I seem to really only get the violets. I don't get like muggles coming. I'm not here to initiate people totally in density. Still, I'm here to help quicken and accelerate faster everybody's highest destiny potential and coming into full awakening. So it's very advanced souls who have played out the karma and patterns that they took on and got a full lesson and education of that for however many years while seeking spiritual things. And of course it would lead to them awakening, as they're going to then finding me in Sacred Alchemy in the temple of Sacred Alchemy, and now it's like rapid. And we're seeing that more and more in through other energetics, as we talked about, of people just having thought they were muggles, even thought they were a normal human, only to find out when they start awakening they're not normal at all. They're not even from here, and they are very enlightened in their true authentic selves. And as that self comes online, now all their gifts come out. But of course that's coded and timed, and time for the planet. One of the interesting things I've seen is that goes hand in hand with inner work. So if you see anyone who's rapidly transforming, they're doing inner work. They're shifting their internal reality. They're moving out of the darkness to the light and within their own being. And their shadow self is being dethroned and their authentic self is being put on that throne of power within to be heading and manning its station as in the command center of people's lives and beings. This is a big exodus out of shadow self into authentic selfhood. So I feel it's extremely exciting, and that no one needs to worry. Your destiny is encoded within you. Your timing is encoded. I did a lot of research and work in the mystic path, and all of a sudden I was in forums globally and bringing my light to the world. And then everyone has cycles. No one above, below. No one better or less. We all are coded and with this vision of the transformed world, and we all will get activated and bring out our gifts and our pieces at the perfect timing. And the more we just align with the truth of who we are and do the meditations, do the inner work, eat healthy, and do all the things conducive to being in that higher minded, conscious beingness and state, the more we are vessels of the change, of a positive change, an amazing, amazing, miraculous future that is birthing right now for humanity.
And one of the individuals I find has a fascinating role within this is Donald Trump. Now, on the surface, it's easy to look at his negative traits, and he has many. But he brings up the darkness that's been within our, in this instance, our country, that has to be brought up to be healed. And he provides that role very readily. And many of us would say, okay, that's been healed, or growing up through the 60s, you could say, well, the civil discrimination's not there, or whatever. And when you go through an election and some of this process, and you still see bigotry alive and well, we can recognize, no, it's got to be brought up, because I'm part of the mass consciousness. And if I can heal that within me, it's not about me trying to heal it and point fingers at this other person. It's about healing it as part of the mass consciousness. That's how we heal the whole group. I don't have to worry about
what they're doing out there.
Exactly.
But if they trigger us, then we do.
And
then it's ours.
And it's in us.
I wish more people understood that, Michael, because look, we've had corrupt politicians, we've seen it all. But should we start crying and beating our chests and ripping out our hair because there's ever new ones that are parading their insanity or their unconsciousness in this world? No, it's what people have failed to understand is when we get triggered, that means there's a dark element in our psyche that needs to get healed, and someone being in their unconscious self is got to trigger it. And someone being in their loving self is not going to trigger it. And so we need these catalysts. Now, I, for one, will not say anything bad about the President of the United States. I feel that's a holy, sacred office. I just hold a prayerful mindset that anyone who steps into that office will receive a mantle, a divine mantle, and lead America into a good promised land.
See, now that's a really good point I want to emphasize. Because this is true for mothers with their sons. This is true for us looking at anyone. If we can hold them in the highest light as a creator in this universe, when their soul level energy is ready to step into that energetic signature, it's there for them. And it's been proven with many scientific studies, especially on a smaller level, whether it's a manager and his team, a mother holding an energy for her son. It's called the Pygmalion effect. And the amazing things that happen in the quantum field, holding this higher level of an energetic instead of dropping back into our conditioned judgment. I've got that t-shirt. I can drop into judgment too, although not as readily as I perhaps used to, but doesn't mean that I can't be triggered, as part of that. But it's just interesting, and I wanted to emphasize that the holding an energetic for anybody,
holding
of the
light
highest
for them,
energy you can is huge.
And not being blind. Come on, everybody. Have we even loved any politician since we came? I mean, really, there's been so much corruption. There's been so much disappointment. Promises never delivered, and for all reasons why. What's so shocking in the last couple years is to see the most conscious, loving, amazing spiritual people coming unglued over one individual that gets elected as if they're going to be a dictator for 36 years, and we've got Pol Pot here or a Hitler, and we have to scream and yell and bash and hate. And the level of hatred, the level of fighting, the level of putting down and making wrong and pointing fingers, the people doing it, I just watch their energy, and I just feel like it's so dark energy coming through light bearers that are doing this about one person, as if this is the end of the world, as if us striking down a whole country, Iraq, and decimating it for those poor people over some false ideas wasn't worse. You know, it's shocking to me, and I just want to share to anyone that has found themselves wrapped up and in a frenzy over the media's portrayal of things in this time, to take a step back and go inside and see why you hate that, why you want to tear and claw that down, what is getting triggered inside you, where's this hatred, this seething hatred, this you know, if you could shoot the person, you would, and you scratch out their eyes, you would. Where's that vehemence, that violence coming from within you? And let's just get that cleaned up, because this is your grand opportunity. It's not about Trump, it's not about Hillary or any of these people parading in their shadow selves. And I'm not saying they always are in their shadow selves, but, you know, parading in their shadow selves. Why do you think we're going to have a divinely anointed person in their authentic self sitting on any throne of this world, when everybody has the shadow self on the thrones of their own being, running their show all day long in the shadow self?
These elected officials are mirrors.
Mirrors. It's like, welcome to you on the dark side.
And they're not mirroring the highest level.
No.
They're mirroring more like
human.
At a medium, at a median, whatever that median is.
Yeah.
They're not certainly level at the enlightened side. They're more at the common.
They're human. They're caught in the human programs, like all of us. And maybe they haven't done any inner work yet. But why are they there? What's the mirrored image? Okay, let's look inside. Do we have our shadow self sitting in that throne of power within us? We're giving power to it all day long by being irritable and upset and nagging and screaming and putting people down and judgments and unhappy? Or we have our authentic selves? This is my prophecy. This is my years of knowledge, because I've helped countless people get in their authentic selves, and their whole worlds are shifting and their relationships are flourishing. There's so much beneficence. When humanity dethrones the shadow self and transforms all those patterns and aspects and matrices and beliefs, and allows their true, divine, eternal, immortal self that is fully intact within them, fully operational and ready to transform their soul and all that corruption back to the golden self, when masses of humanity have done that, we will have the most amazing benefactors helping guide corporations, endeavors, projects, and countries into the better world. So don't cry to me that you don't like our president, or you don't like our senator, or you don't like this. Like, roll up your sleeves, transform your life, and be the life and the light of the world that you want them to be, and you want the world to be. And you will do more.
One of the most important ways I see it, as far as how to make those steps, is to disconnect from the conditioning. Mm-hmm. And years ago, in some of the processes I did in my awakening, was I went through a process where I disconnected from the fear matrix. Mm-hmm. You could say the same thing about the victimhood matrix.
Yeah.
All of these different huge archetype conditionings that drive so many people to act out of these old paradigms. Mm-hmm. Once you disconnect from that, once you disconnect from the conditioning, all of a sudden you can step back and you can see the world for what it is, and I'm not being triggered.
We're not triggered
by all of these things.
Yeah, we can watch them do the play, but where we get upset means we have work.
But if I get triggered, I've stepped back into my old paradigms, the old beliefs, and on down. So easily the biggest work I would look at to begin with has to do around self-love, I cannot love another any more than I love myself. And my good friend Azura, not Aurora, another A, Azura, that's the first thing she does with all of her clients is she goes in and works on healing any belief structures counter to that healing of the self-love for them. But just those two aspects, that disconnecting from somehow that conditioning. Turn the TV off. Don't listen to the news.
I would turn the news off.
Don't listen
I don't
to
think
the
it's supportive in this time.
Oh, it's not.
I think it's driving people to be their worst selves, to hate somebody and hate things and hate political parties and be against and cause like a war. And I think that if we're in our authentic selves, that self is always compassionate and wise and loving. It doesn't tolerate abuse, but it's not going to bash and scream and tear down and destroy. It's going to seek to remedy and support. And so if you're in your authentic self and you see someone being a bigot, you don't hate them. You don't scream about it. You don't tell 1,500 people how horrible they are. You look at them with compassion. You realize, wow, they're still in the old paradigm we're all moving out of. And Lord knows we've all had matrices and weird things from our family lineages where we've been maybe in scarcity consciousness, or we've been in abusive relationships, and where we haven't been our best. So is it really a big thing if somebody has something they're still running when we're all running so many patterns still? And I would say, yeah, let's have compassion and loving. Okay, so we know energy. We know projecting energy, what it does. There's countless tests on plants. You could make wither from hateful energy and water, that forms dark matrices if we project energy. So think of it. If hundreds of thousands of people are being incited against a person, and sending and bashing and all that negative energy and all that hate running through their bodies, all that cortisol breaking down their bodies, now they're getting destroyed, and the person they're projecting at is getting destroyed. And this is like a whole breakdown rather than being in the loving self, compassion for self and others, sending light for a person in need that's ruling a country or heading something big like a corporation, and they're putting poison into everybody's food. Let's bring light remedies, power-packed light remedies to this dark equation, and let's start with ourselves and then pour out more through our endeavors and all of the offerings that we're bringing forth. Let's be part of the solution that's leading us to a more harmonious Edenic world. Wars do not support that world we all want to move into.